Well, continuing work on this thing, we're going to have to get some brakes going, and I noticed a lot of these flex lines are pretty bad. In fact, looks like this one's corroded right off of there. This thing's a little complicated with its brake system, much more than newer vehicles, and especially the gray bus. Although the gray bus does have ABS on it too. But what we're going to do, the rubber's pretty well shot on here. Oh, that one's just breaking off right now too. The nylon's all rotted. We're going to attempt to get some new flex lines because these are junk. But what we need to do, I got some PB Blast here. I'm going to spray these off. See if we can't get them to come loose. I'm going to let them soak for a little while. Got some brake line here. That'll be a later project. We at least got to get these flex lines fixed first, and a brake flaring toolkit. Alright, this is the left front side. Spray them off real good. Maybe we'll hit these bleeder screws too while we're here. Well, these don't look quite as bad, but they're still shot, so we'll spray them. Underneath the bus now, we're looking at the flex lines for the brake line. And see, these are all rotted off too. Spray that one. Spray that one. I really don't know if those are going to be salvageable to get those off. They might be pretty well frozen into the blocks that they screw into. And the same thing for here. Well, these brake lines don't look very well. But we'll go ahead and spray these two, because either way they got to come off one way or another. If we got to destroy, that's what we got to do. Split that bleeder screw there too. There's one up there in the top. See, these brakes are awfully goofy with all the extra lines and wheel cylinders. There's just a lot of points of failure, you know. Typical drum brakes are only going to have one wheel cylinder, which, you know, has pistons in opposing directions. And I don't know if these are just single piston or double. They're probably double. We'll just spray those down and let them soak for a while, because eventually we're going to have to try and bleed these brakes, and those bleeder screws are probably going to snap right off, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. This axle vent should spin, and it's froze on there. Typical. The body down here by the rear axle usually rots out real bad, and this one looks pretty good. Frames are rusty, axle's rusty, but what do you expect? International Harvester. And here's something I did too, was this thing had these two all-position tires on the right side and these lug drive tires on the other side here. I moved them around so they are now symmetric, and they got these meaty looking drives. I think it looks pretty cool on this bus. Here, I'll show you. There you go. Now you got these meaty looking drives that you see from the outside. It's that more old school adage of put some tough stuff on here to drive it through the weather. I got the brake line off. That's the brake line hanging down. It's got a square, I guess, block or whatever that the brake line goes into. Like the gray bus, it just does a 90-degree on the brake line and goes into the tube, because I just changed one of those, a couple months ago. Anyway, you got that square block. Here's a tube over here. So that square block gets fastened to this with a banjo bolt. So it's got a banjo bolt. It's got a hole in it there. So it has to seal on the block. And then it's got a seal right there too. Inside this, this has got a nut that spins on here. I got it pretty tight back on here again. Oops. To the flex line, which is here, which threads into another junction block right there, which splits a brake line going this way. I'm just like, man, this is just awful silly. It's just a whole lot of extra parts in here they don't really need. Alright, let's go to getting one of the back brake lines off. Alright, so this brake line, I got it off here. That's, well, just broke off, the flex line here. Anyway, it makes it kind of nice because you can just take a socket and throw it on here, and zip the line right out. Oh, look at that. A little brake fluid coming out of there. Right here, these are called brake tubing wrenches. And they can slide over a tube, but you still get a little extra grip on here. Anytime you can use a 6-point socket, it's good because you could easily round this off. We're back. Dead battery. So we got some charge, just a little bit. This is a tubing wrench. So anyway, I got the side out already. So typically what you would do here is fit your tubing wrench over right there. Something going on here? No, maybe it's bigger. Yeah, that's 7/16. So anyway, you put that on there and try to loosen it. I'll bring this over towards me a little more so I can get a better grip on it. So I'm feeling it like wanting to strip and move around, so I'm going to show you what we're going to do here. I'm going to take this off. Now this line is already broke anyway. Break it the rest of the way off, this part. Okay, so now you got that off out of the way. Now you can take a socket and put it on here. And you can really put some horsepower to her. Let's get that line out of the way. Because this line's broke, you're going to replace it anyway. Who cares if you break it more? Because if you can put a 6-point socket on it, then you are way better off and not break it off. And now this part is saved, we can reuse it. And then there's the piece out there so we can match up what we need as far as brake line. So these typically you'd put on with a wrench, but we're just going to break it off because it's pretty easy. Whoops, broke it off. And there's your line on the end. So anyway, typically that line would be here and you couldn't get a tubing wrench or a... Well, you might be able to get a tubing wrench on there because the line was on here, like that. But, since I broke the line off, we can take our handy socket with a 6-point on it, fit her on down here, give her a little crank. Well, it comes right loose. Alright, so there's our elements or pieces of our brake line. So also over here, I mentioned earlier, I got this out, the breather. I got it loosened up so the top... Now, let's just throw it in. There we go. Alright, so we're going to tighten that down. So I took this off. The top, see it spins. It's nice and loose now. This is a breather for the axle. So when this axle heats up, fluid expands, the air in there expands, and it puts pressure in the tube. Well, this vents that pressure. Otherwise, this tube, the axle tube, stays pressurized. And what does it do? Blows out the seal up there on the differential. Blows out the wheel seals. So... it's important, and these do get clogged up from air and oil splashing around in them. They get nastied up, and that's what happened here. 3/4, we just tighten her down. That's not 3/4. Actually, I took this out with a metric crescent wrench. Just kidding. I ended up taking this out because I cleaned it out and I used compressed air, some brake clean. I jammed a screwdriver in it to dig out all the crap because it was, busted up. Probably not going to hurt anything. This thing's sitting, not going down the road. But when we start driving it, which hopefully we'll do soon, we want this to be able to vent and do its job. So there you go. Well, I've been working on some wiring in the old bus here. You can see I got all these panels pulled down on the right side. Pretty easy. Wish Bluebird would have kept these. Nice like the Thomases. Anyway, had a problem with I had clearance lights in the back that wouldn't work. And, well, these are kind of interesting. These wires that they plug in and they get insulation, but there's also a harness in the back. I'll show you that here in a minute too. The insulation is on this is just all cracked, so I think we're just going to put heat shrink butt connectors on there. I like those. I think they're a little bit better than just a regular butt connector. Even though these are inside the bus, they're away from weather. What's interesting is in this harness going back, we've got an extra green wire here, and that feeds the middle clearance light. And that's what I actually used to swap these around, unplug this green one, put it here, because one of these greens does that middle clearance light alone, and then the other one does the all the clearance lights in the back of the bus. I'm thinking Bluebird maybe had like a standard wiring harness that they used at the time, and then when there were options added, they just added the extra wires. Like all these white ones are for the interior lights that go back, but they're not in the harness that's taped up. They're separate. They're just added in here. And then the extra green light. So I'm wondering if maybe when that extra clearance light was added, they already had these harnesses made and they just decided, well, we'll just add the extra wire for the middle clearance light when that became a law or whatever it was, a rule. So I found here, I think, our problem. Looks like Fluffy the rat has been involved chewing away wires and insulation. There's a wire chewed up right there. So I think that's going to be our problem. We go through and start fixing the wires, because I can see one of the green ones is torn up. Maybe that's why some other tail lights in the back don't work. So again, the same thing back here, but the nice part about this is we've got extra wiring that I can probably pull back if we need it to fix that wiring. These are where those connections are. So interesting.